Welcome back to the Marketing Millennials. Today's guest is Brian Bez, Senior CRM Lead at Samsung. Brian has spent 15 years driving digital transformation, helping generate over 500 million in e-commerce revenue, and leading the charge on CRM and e-commerce at Samsung. He's seen the evolution of the customer journeys firsthand. What started as a couple platforms has now exploded into 10 plus connected touchpoints across email, SMS, push, and beyond. Brian's passion, CRM as an own channel. He loves building with those hand raisers, the loyal customers who want to hear from your brand. And he's got serious insights on how to keep those relationships warm while balancing compliance, AI, and personalization at scale. Brian, welcome to the pod. I just want to jump right in and ask you, how do you actually run CRM at scale at one of the biggest consumer brands in the world?
It has become quite complicated, but also really simple at the same time, if that makes sense. So when I started my journey in digital, I started in e-com and I owned most of the areas of e-com, and CRM has always flowed in as a part of the ecosystem. Another part of it was a paid media piece, and e-com is CRM is the owned media piece. And as I've done almost and touched every single aspect of this whole e-commerce ecosystem, I find myself falling in love more with CRM because it's owned media, because it's the hand raisers that have said, I want to deal with this brand. I want to hear from this brand. I want to have conversations with this brand. So I want to engage with this brand. And it makes it really easy for us to communicate because we know what the signals are. We know what motivates these advocates, these loyal customers. And that's where I like to play versus paid media, where it's a little bit nebulous and you're spraying and praying that it connects. Whereas these are the folk that we own. This is the data that we have in our identity graph, and we are messaging directly to them because we know how to keep that nurturing and that nurture journey going, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So when thinking of that whole journey over the last year, what have you seen as the biggest unlock with throughout that life cycle?
That's a great question. There's so many things that are being reaffirmed right now. I mean, email is not a new channel by any means, but it's a channel that's still continuously growing. It's a channel that is a mainstay for a lot of brands. And now it is extended over to push notification and SMS. And I think one of the things that for me is one of those unlocks is that how they all work together. Customers who are equally interested in hearing from us via SMS or push notification through the apps, or even web push and email, is all a part of telling a unified message so that we're not repeating ourselves across all of these channels that are very similar in use and nature. I feel like we see the most immediate interaction with SMS or push notification or even web push than we do with email, even though that email is still very productive and is a big part of our messaging strategy. But I would say that the unlock is that when we get all of them to work in unison, that we see the best results, as well as using retargeting to be a part of the ecosystem.
What is a typical, let's say like a basic typical setup look for you, if you could explain in the back end between like the mixture of email push, like if you were designing a flow for a customer, like what does an example of one of those flows look like?
That's another good question. I think for my team, we work with another team called PPX, which is post-purchase experience. They aren't a part of my team, but they sit in my department. So we build flows for them. We are helping them ingest the customers that we acquire through lead gen. Depending on where they enter or .com experience, then the flow is specific to a line of business, whether they come through a mobile product that they recently purchased or a television product or home appliance. It changes the nature of the journey. And then what we try to do is we try to build on that experience, because if you're interested in our brand from one line of business, you may be interested in others. And we are trying to determine what your preferences are, what other products you may be interested in, so that when we start messaging you, we have enough signals about you to know what we should be messaging and what we should be suppressing. And after about 3 different emails within that warming up journey to get you into the fold of the onslaught of communications that we have across the various lines of business CRM accounts or the ecom CRM or push notification and SMS. We want to make sure that we are not over engaging and the mix is kind of like just right. And so that's part of how those journeys get built out as well.
I know you talked a little bit about, mentioned a little bit like personalization of the journey. What are some, like, are you collecting a lot of like first party data along the way to be able to like personalize, or what does personalization look like to you?
Personalization is an ever evolving, I think, strategy. There are a lot of companies who talk about personalization and some get it right, some don't. I think for us, part of it is understanding the product that the person actually owns, other products that they seem to be interested in propensity wise, and then just aligning up those messages with them. We also listen to our customers in terms of the feedback that we get from them. They interact directly with our emails at times when we ask them how we're doing, and we're paying attention to what they're also saying. So on top of promotions, they also want to get the brand building blocks, like how does this product work? Are there any product accessories that go with this product that I currently own? And we are listening to that and personalizing emails using a third-party tool, like, for example, Movable Ink, that allows for 3 or 4 different emails to not have the same content, but have the same core. So in addition, I may have bought a frame TV, you may have bought a bespoke AI refrigerator, and we will see complementary information about those products that we currently own, but also the latest products that are coming down the pike that we think you may have a propensity for in your next purchase. So we're doing a lot of personalization that way by understanding what signals you are most attracted to, but then also making sure that we're not over engaging with personalization and just throwing things at the wall just to see what sticks. We are really trying to get very specific around purchase frequencies, meaning how often do you think you need to be messaged about an upgrade of your product? Is that refrigerator a 5 to 7 year lifespan? Is that phone a 2-year lifespan in terms of when it's time for you to upgrade? And we're messaging and nurturing you accordingly based on that.
That makes total sense. Because by the way, I do have a frame TV and love it. So I'm just giving a shout out to the frame because you mentioned it. But one thing I know you talked about the post purchase journey, but I want to know if a little bit of, because one of the cool things about being part of like the CRM team is also the conversions of people who came in and didn't convert yet, or didn't. So first of all, like, what is the process of identifying people who come to your site and then they haven't purchased, and what is the next step? And then also, like, what are some of the ways that you're retargeting through those own channels to make sure, like, to get them to get that frame TV, to get them to buy that new phone, to get them to maybe be interested in that refrigerator?
There are a couple of ways that we approach that. I'll list out a couple of pillars that we follow as far as rules for re-engagement for folk who get emails from us, don't even go to the site, don't even open the email. So if you're not even opening the email, what we can do with that is we can remail you and send you the exact same email content. However, we can play around with the subject line and the pre-header to get you to open. We've run tactics where we know that if we do X or Y, then the open rate could be a little bit higher as far as clickability. That typically happens mostly for the audiences that are cold, meaning that they have opted in, but they may not have purchased anything from Samsung as yet, but we don't know that much about them other than they're interested in the brand. So we're using where they click, what pages they've visited, to kind of get a sense of what signals make the most sense for them. And we put them in specific buckets within that cold audience ecosystem, more or less. But we start with potentially doing a remail using the same content, because if they haven't seen the content, then it still may resonate. We just may need to tweak the subject line and remail them that way. But if we do get them to click and they go to the .com and they're not buying anything, but they engage with content, that's where the retargeting strategy comes in. So if they just review a product or just preview a product on our category pages, there's a category retargeting email that kind of comes out and then pushes them further down the funnel into the middle part of the funnel, which would be the PDP. If they've shown some interest or propensity for that, if they've actually engaged with the product and added it to their cart, then there's that retargeting email that brings them back to the cart experience to say, time to check out, not necessarily like that, but it kind of drives the conversation back to the card experience so that they can actually check out. So there are a couple of different ways. Or if you've noticed that this person hasn't really been engaging with our content in the last 6 months, then they're put into a different type of campaign, which is about churn and reactivation. So there are a lot of pillars and levers being pulled at the same time, and where people fall in and out of the cycle of CRM communications.
Yeah, and I know it's probably not your team too, but I bet you're also like pushing a lot of those audiences back into the paid team to build custom audiences to retarget on other channels as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a part of the cookie engagement on .com. So some of those audiences that come through our .com are still being engaged with in paid media. But I think one of the challenges in terms of compliance these days, as CRM rules and regulations are being built, as we start leveraging more and more AI as part of the mix, there are now a lot more guardrails being implemented in Europe especially, and then now also in America, that we need to start becoming a little bit more mindful of. So over engagement and just the leveraging of information is something that's coming into play. So we're becoming more familiar with what that means and the implications that will have on CRM as a practice.
Yeah, but luckily, the great thing about CRM is that is the ownage of the audience, because you're not algorithm dependent. You have multiple avenues to use emails to try get people to come back on, like through email, maybe through other avenues to make sure they you can communicate with them.
Yeah, it's very one-to-one, which makes it so ideal. And I think that's why within this large practice of e-commerce, I can find a home here and say, well, this works and I love it here. I don't think I want to go back to the broader practice of e-commerce at all. I think I love CRM, and I think this is where I'm going to be for a while.
I think you mentioned this slightly, but I would love to know like how you're thinking about AI in the CRM world, and what are you using now, and what are you excited to test in the future, or where do you see it going? Is a better question.
I see it going to agentic AI a little bit more, in that leveraging AI agents to help us build out better strategies around audience segments in terms of what's the best message for next best product or next best action. Once we outline what those actions and products are within, say, for example, a Black Friday, Cyber Monday strategy, right? And also leveraging AI to generate actual creative and what is the best creative strategy, and just helping us implement and be faster about how we stand these campaigns up. And within all of that, though, I think as we start leveraging AI and how we use the information, this first party, second party, third party data that we have on our customers, I've been reading a lot about the implications for CRM and how certain practices are going to be up for regulation in the next couple of months into years, meaning how we nudge customers to buy the next product, how we whisper in their ear to say, maybe this product is right for you. And they're calling it dark practices to some extent, which is very interesting. So a lot of it is coming up for grabs. As much as I'm interested in how we can spin up campaigns much faster than we normally could, I still trust my gut implicitly. And I think AI is only going to help us become a lot more efficient. We're not looking to displace anyone at this point. We're just looking to be able to spin up versionings, specific versions that we may not have thought about when we look at our customer segmentation strategy and how we message and what types of creative we generate. I think AI is going to help us to be a lot more proficient in that regard. And I am excited for the future where that's concerned, because I'm actually back in school right now. I'm working on a second master's in AI policy and management. And so we're actually working on class projects that tie back into CRM. I just started a project that talks about moving from something called surveillance capitalism to more, what is it called? Stewardship marketing. and how we move from being on that surveillance capitalist bandwidth, moving to a type of marketing that is more customer centric and is preservationist of your private data. And we are going to engage in practices that are far more transparent in terms of price transparency, no dynamic pricing, and less of the nudging and all of that, just becoming better stewards of marketers as we relate to engagement with our customers. So yeah, that's what.
Yeah. I think in the age of AI, especially for CRM, the ability to like back even like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the amount of like reporting you had to do manually, the amount of building lists you had to do manually, the amount of understanding customers you have to do manually. If that is taken by AI, you actually can now deliver more personalized experiences based on what customers are actually preferring they want. And I think that is like the next level of marketing is people don't want to say they got a frame TV and then next minute you're telling them they should get something that is completely like obsolete to what they even care about. They want to get something like maybe frame TV, then you connect them to like something on the frame TV or something that's complementary to the frame TV,
for example, or
yeah,
the sound bar that is complementary.
Exactly.
And if they share need for something else, then and only then should we start incorporating that other line of business into the mix. Only if they've shown a propensity for it, not just trying to figure it out, because that becomes a lot less personal.
One thing I wanted to ask you, because I know like I used to be in marketing ops, but I know like tools are important to be. So what are like, I know you mentioned WonderKind, like what are some like, what are the tools that are like key to your stack? And then also like, what is your favorite thing about the tools?
Oh, that's interesting. I would say for me, I have access to less of a stack than I used to because we use agencies and they are the ones leveraging those stacks. I would say Tableau is another one that we use a lot in terms of ingesting data. I would say it's more collaborative as opposed to tools per se, because I have other teams that I work with to get insights. So we've got a team that actually does a ton of surveys, does a ton of outreach, and just really tries to understand customer insights from a CRM perspective and how it relates to our strategies. And that's what I leverage a lot. And then on top of that, I'm always looking for opportunities to use our agency partners in ways that we haven't been using them before. I'll give you a classic example of that. So WonderKind is our retargeting partner, but we wanted to incorporate a lot more personalization with retargeting, which may sound a bit of an oxymoron because it just basically interacts with people who just interacted on the site, whether we know a lot about them or not. But there are ways that we've been trying to slowly incorporate personalization, and we've been seeing a really good net effect of that. And then also pulling in their partnership with Movable Ink, which allows us to bring in dynamic content on the fly for those retargeted customers. I think those are some of my favorite tools, but also Movable Ink as far as being able to offer the same dynamic principles of giving folk different content that speaks squarely to them. That's been a game changer for us because we don't have to create 100 versions. We can have 5 or 6 main versions, but then we can have module insertions using the dynamic propensities from Movable Ink to bring in that dynamic content. So yeah, those are my favorite tools of choice.
And then one thing that's very interesting what do you look for for an agency partner? Like, what does a good working relationship look like with an agency partner? Because there's hard agencies to work with, easier agencies to work with. What's like an ideal like partner look like?
That's interesting because I've worked with agencies now for most of my career. I would say I've had great relationships with most of them. One of the things that I look for is communication, working with really smart people that understand what it is that they're bringing to the table. What are your strengths as an agency? And are we constantly seeing those trends sharpen over the life cycle of our relationship? That's also super important. And do we get along? And are we bumping heads? Is it a complementary relationship and we see you as an extension of our team? And then I think that's that's primarily the core of the relationship. Are you an extension of our team? And if the answer is yes, then yeah, all cylinders are firing. I mean, I've worked at the agency level for like 3 years. I left brand side, went to agency for 3 years to kind of see how that was going to go. And I always wanted to see how the other half lived. And I tried it. I didn't love it. I missed brand side almost every single day. And I came back to brand side. But it gave me a better understanding of how the inner workings of an agency actually run and operate. I don't know if that would be the best example of that, but because I'm sure other agencies operate differently and they have their own rhythm, I guess. But I would say for me, again, it primarily comes back down to, are you an extension of our team? Are you helping us lift and grow and challenging us as well? And I think those are the things that we look for in a great agency partner.
I love that. I do think that if you ever can get agency experience just to understand agency world, it's always like a good way to understand the inner workings of an agency, because you also have like a lot more respect for agencies when you work for an agency, because you understand how some clients treat you versus other clients, how much stressful it is to get a email like with fire alarms every second. So that's some agencies I've seen. And I've seen a lot of my friends who work with agencies that are like, or work for agencies, and they have gray hairs from that. So I feel for them.
I mean, I also worked in fashion for a decade, and I think if I could survive that, I could survive anything. And then that's kind of how I looked at working at my last agency. I mean, Samsung was my client, so transparently, that's how I ended up here. And coming onto that account, you kept being told that, oh, this is a very difficult client, very stressful, demanding, all those things. But coming from fashion, I felt like, well, if I've survived that for a decade, I think I can survive anything. And I didn't find the account that challenging. I found them to be smart, knowledgeable, and they just wanted good work from us. They wanted work that was representative of their business needs, but also meeting the customer needs. And then on top of that, obviously, you have to intersect what the agency POV is about, right? And I think having that exposure to Samsung made me feel like, okay, I could work here and leave the agency thing behind. And that's kind of what I did, essentially.
Couple more questions. One question I have for you. I know holiday season is coming up. What are some like tips and tricks you can give people in CRM like preparing for the season, whether it's Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or the actual holidays?
I would say a tip of the trick would be to look at what your projections are in terms of your targets for this year. Is it far and above higher than it was the year before? And if it is, then you need to start earlier than you had planned, or you need to build in some additional KDPs, meaning additional campaigns prior to that, in the event that your CRM revenue may be a little soft. I think for us here, I think every year retailers are starting earlier and earlier. I think this is going to be a really interesting year with tariffs happening, and a lot of companies are bracing themselves for that because it's going to directly impact everyone's consumers. And so we're not really sure what that's going to look like come the holiday season. Is it going to be lukewarm versus hot? And so there's a lot of unknowns. And I think starting earlier does give you a bit more runway to kind of get a sense of where things are going, and start building those gift guides now and start deploying them now to kind of get a sense of interaction and of what people are engaging with, and start prioritizing your best products and your best offers up front and building out that strategy all the way to the end of the year.
I think you also make a good point on the tariffs. I mean, if you do have like a product that might be longer to ship or take longer, and you're waiting till the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and it says 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, it could be this long to ship. For you, you might lose a lot more customers than just saying, hey, like Black Friday is coming early, you get this now. because it's going to take 5 to 6 weeks to ship because of tariffs. Oh, we don't know what's going to happen with tariffs, so like might as well get it before a tariff hits for that product.
That, and if you're reliant on components to build your existing product here in the US, then that also could be a challenge. Trying to get those components brought in, or the price of those components being passed on to customers. Like a lot of those unknowns are going to come into play this year. So it's going to be a very interesting holiday period.
Lastly, I like to ask this question to everybody on this podcast, but what's a marketing hill you would die on?
What's a marketing hill that I would die on? I would say I would die on the hill of CLTV. It's something that a lot of brands don't talk about or leverage enough. Customer lifetime value, understanding purchase frequencies, when and how often people buy your product, and also what is that entire life cycle of the relationship between the consumer and a brand looks like. Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Make that part of your creative calculus, make that part of your promotional calculus, and everything kind of emanates from that math, right? And I think a lot of brands do not leverage that. And I keep championing it over and over again. It's not anything new. It's not rocket science. It's been around forever, but a lot of brands aren't leveraging it or even know what their CLTV calculus is. And I keep having to reinforce that again and again, and I'll never stop talking about it. So I think that's one of the hills that I think I'll probably die on. Yeah.
It's interesting because us marketers a lot of time we're so focused on that getting that sale, getting that conversion, where we don't think about like what happens after the conversion and like like you said, post purchase and all, like making sure that person comes back and becomes a raving fan of the brand. Like that sometimes is more important because it's so much easier to keep a person a raving fan than trying to create a new raving fan of the brand. So
exactly. It costs so much for acquisition. If you look at your CPA or cost per acquisition versus what it takes to nurture this person to the next sale, and then also subsequent sales, because you know what your CLTV value is, you can divide that by your CPA and then figure out like, oh, which one should I be investing in more? Should I be spending more time pulling new customers in, or should I be nurturing my existing customer, but still keeping that lead gen and that acquisition funnel, lively, but retention and repurchase, that's to me the lifeblood of any brand.
Yeah, because what I've noticed a lot of the times is there's some channels that look so good in the sense that will look decent in the sense of conversion, but they like after the conversion they just like flop, and those people never become a customer again, or there's a lot of refunds, or the journey, there was like false promises, or they weren't nurtured enough as a customer. And I wouldn't say false promises, but they weren't nurtured enough as a customer. And then you look at another channel that might have a little worse, a little better, and their like lifetime value is way better, and you're under investing on that channel. So sometimes it's better. Like we've had channels where when I used to work at B2B, like Facebook, we used to have such low cost per acquisition, but retention was horrible of those customers. So we had to like the cost was actually not worth it at the end of the journey. So
I call it a mousetrap, really. I mean, how sticky is that mousetrap to keep them engaged and coming back and loving the brand? And if you build the right type of mousetrap, and I'm talking about the stickier ones versus the ones with the metal clasps, right? I'm talking about the stickier mousetraps. If you build one of those correctly, then you will have those customers coming back and really advocating for your brand because they love the experience, not just the product, but they love the experience that they have as they engage with you and the products and the information you share with them, leveraging CRM and also leveraging that CLTV calculus as well. Not over engaging, not pushing products that make no sense for them, but pushing products that actually get them to their next, or pushing engagement gets them to their next purchase organically.
Thank you so much for taking the time Thank you for coming on the podcast, sharing all your knowledge. Lastly, I want to leave it. Is there any way people can connect with you, or is there anything you want to talk about to pump you? Yeah.
If anyone wants to connect with me, LinkedIn is obviously the best place. On LinkedIn, I'm Brian R. Best, so BRB for short. You can easily find me there, and I work at Samsung, so that's pretty easy to navigate those keywords: name, company. Fine, reach out. I'm happy to chat.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Daniel. I appreciate it too.